Sophie Henley-Price. You are Principal Partner at Studios Architecture and Chair of the ULI Europe Awards and Global Awards for Excellence jury. Thank you for joining us on BiTV.
Thank you for having me.
The Urban Land Institute recently revealed its ULI Europe Awards for Excellence 2022. What are your main takeaways from this year's edition?
Well, I've seen the ULI Awards over the years. I've been previously in 2015 a jury in the past, and I would say what really struck me this year is one, all three winners were the results of out of the ordinary collaborations between multiple stakeholders. So not just within a project team or a client team. And also what struck me was their community engagement. So they are not standalone projects. They are projects that have thought really about how they're engaging with the broader community. So they all have a component of equity, of bringing people together, and or future-proofing the project so that they can be open to the community tomorrow. So they think beyond the simple building that they are representing, and that is quite impressive. And all of them are about regeneration and about repairing the urban fabric. One of the projects is a new build, two of them are renovations and a component of new build, but they are all about the urban fabric. And in fact, one of the global jurors that I worked with said something very powerful, I thought. She said, for too long, we have had buildings that we could look into, but we felt an outsider to. And what was marvelous about these three projects is you can look into them, but you feel a part of them. And I think that's a real shift in the way we're thinking about real estate and our responsibility.
Okay, and you mentioned the three projects that were this year's winner in Europe, Latitude in Paris, Mecca in Bordeaux, and Norblen Factory in Warsaw. What distinguish these projects, do you think, from their competition?
So ULI have very, very tough criteria to become a winner. You have to be excellent in absolutely every area. So that in itself is quite difficult to achieve. And these three really achieved it hands down, which obviously the others did not. So maybe just as a reminder, one of the first criteria is driving innovation. That can come in many, many shapes and forms, but somehow they're looking to the future. They're pushing things forward. They're not just replicating the status quo. And then there's a series of criteria. You've got to have successful community engagement and placemaking. So again, it goes back to what I said about the contribution to the urban fabric and to the broader community. It's got to be on an environmental level, show excellent stewardship and resilience, again, a degree of future-proofing. It's got to show design leadership and architectural excellence, but it's not an pure architecture award, but obviously it needs that component. It needs replicability. In other words, they're projects that we can learn from and we can use those to replicate it elsewhere. So they are really projects that can help create more responsible real estate projects elsewhere in Europe or around the world. And then obviously they need financial viability. So you can't just do a great project and it's a complete financial disaster. That is a form of non-resilience. So that's also an important, and I'll come back to it actually later. And then what's also interesting is in the analysis, we don't analyze an end product. We look at the process, the way it was executed, the way it was executed, the final result, and then we measure the impact on the community. So a project that's just been completed doesn't necessarily. So we really look at what's the feedback from the surrounding community, and you can have amazing comments from taxi drivers, or so just already meeting that is a challenge. I say what also made these three projects really stand out, and that comes when you go to visit the projects, because we spend 3-4 hours with them really understanding what the project's about, is the absolute passion of these people in leading their projects. They really went the extra mile. probably blood, sweat and tears to achieve what they achieved. And they really gave the sense that they made something impossible possible.
Okay, you mentioned the importance of resilience for future-proofing the assets. It's even more interesting in light of the climate change and macroeconomic tensions. The European real estate industry continues to transform. What will a real estate project need to be considered exemplary going forward, do you think?
Well, so first of all, it was interesting, 2 of these projects were renovations, and I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that. I certainly think there should be a shift, and we should be looking at projects that are repairing what's already there rather than demolishing and starting all over again. And in fact, I can mention it now, but in the Global Awards, it was very interesting to see that the 2 projects from Asia that won, one of them was they were both very small, repairing the urban fabric projects. They're not your typical massive, an entire neighborhood project. So I think there was a real shift. Another thing that I noticed in the same vein, both on the Europe Awards and on the Global Awards, and just for reference, the Global Awards the contenders are all the winners of each region. So Americas, Asia, Europe, those winners get put into the Global Awards. So you're dealing really with the best of the best. And what we saw was very much a very strong message of frugality. Less is more. You can do great things with less. It doesn't have to be big and ostentatious to contribute to the city and to real estate. They also demonstrated that, I think, a real shift of putting people first. You know, I think for too long we did buildings, but we're not necessarily thinking about the people occupying those buildings, living those buildings. That came forward very strongly, and I think will continue. I think it demonstrated that it's not just about the highest returns, and that you can achieve great things. You can balance the social good with the financial return. They don't oppose each other. There are solutions, and there are people who have found those solutions and they've worked and they're still financially viable. And I would say a lot of them are about future looking, future proofing, how we build a better future. It's not we're in, we do it, and we're out again. So hopefully that will leave a lot of room for creativity. There is a big shift in the sector, and I think we're all going to have to learn to do more with less. And I would say that the big lesson, and I think ULI's always backed that idea, they've always been about dialogue, collaboration, and I think dialogue between public and private need to get stronger. They're almost necessary now. They're not an obligation, they have to happen. And dialogue with broader communities. And that really shone through both in the Europe Awards and in the Global Awards.
All right. Thank you very much. Sadly, that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much for this insight. Thank you all for joining us. See you soon on BiTV.
Thank you.